happen. Yes. All right. Well, it hasn't been a loud week in UFOs, but there is some UFO news that is out there. Why don't we start off with the fact that tomorrow night on the show, the former head of ATIP, Luis Elizondo, will be with us for the first 90 minutes of the show. And, I'm going to go at him about the whole experiencer process, man. I really am. I'm very, very curious to see why that angle is now being played out.
Well, may the force be with you.
You don't like that idea?
I can't help but try to put myself into his shoes. And if I was in his position, that would be probably the last one of the things I'd want to tell the public because of the possible complications it would cause. And so I'm just thinking that the only reason why he's mentioned it at all is because of the amount of prodding, poking, and bugging and harassing that he's gotten from everyone, that he's leaked a little bit of it out just because he feels he has to throw people a bone, but he truly actually does not want to talk about it at a very personal level, does not want to talk about it. And so I'm just very concerned about how that's going to play out. All I'm saying is, may the force be with you.
Well, you know what? We're going to test him on out. We're going to see how it goes. We are going to push the envelope over into his side. Maybe throw him a little bit of woo in that envelope and say, "Hey, man, what do you got for us? What's going on here?" I think because he is wrapping up interviews very, very soon regarding the entire phenomena, and this may be, one of the last times we get him on the show for a long, long time.
Well, and the thing is that he responds very, very well to very clever questions. And while I haven't gone into this because I have a lot of skills in this and I don't want to make anyone but there's a lot of ways you can go about manipulating people up with this kind of stuff. So it's kind of funny how it works out.
Well, you know what I'm going to see? I sent him and his wife some Spaced Out Radio swag a couple weeks ago. I'm curious to see if he'll wear one of our shirts tomorrow night on the show. I'm curious.
Well, I mean, I don't see why not. I think he would. And the thing is, like I said, I think he responds incredibly well. He's very much like me. He adores well thought out, well constructed questions. And so, I'm trying to get something asking something does anyone who's ever been employed by the U.S. government know what something from off-world tastes like? You ask them these kind of, or you ask them these kind of very general questions that are clever enough that they tie down to specific data points that would get admitted to if you admitted, you know what I'm saying? Those he tends to respond really well to, and so I think that you do have the potential of getting a lot out of him, because if he's excited about the questions, he's a lot more willing to share information.
Well, I'm hoping that the swag buttered him up a little bit. I really am. I'm hoping. But
Dave, as a quick side note, whenever anyone from the DoD, Intel, anyone would come visit me at that company I was at, and we would meet them in our big boardroom, we would actually have to hold out little trays of money, because basically you are not allowed to pay them anything whatsoever for anything they do, and basically it creates an interesting situation. So you can't even buy them lunch. You're not allowed to buy them anything at all under any so you cater them lunch, they all have to actually pay you for that lunch. That's how fanatical it is. It's really crazy.
Wow. So what do you think of Elon taking over Twitter?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I mean, it's it's a lovely catalyst. It's I don't really know. In my personal experience and things like this, what we typically get is like 2 or 3 home runs, and then the rest of it pretty much goes the way you like an actuary would plan it. So I think there's a good chance that we'll get end-to-end encryption on direct messaging. I think there's a good chance that he'll make that happen. I think there's a good chance we'll get an edit button, and I think the most important thing to me, and this makes it all worth it to me, is opening up the algorithm. And if we can actually get a look at its decision-making process, if we just get those 3 things out of it, then it's worth it. But the thing people have to realize is that Elon didn't just like write a check for this. He went out and raised the money to do this from banks. Those banks expect a return on their investment. So if anyone thinks that this isn't for profit, I mean, come on. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves here, right? The profit may not be what's driving it, but profit is what's supporting it. Let's put it in those terms.
You know what? I'm all for free speech and everything like that. I don't like the way Twitter has been bottlenecked and brought down, especially if you lean toward, and I'm calling this down the middle, but if you lean to more than one side of the political side than the other, then it seems like, there is some stifling of posts and information. I don't like seeing that. But I can tell you this, I realize for some, freedom of speech is a very sensitive topic. And for everything that's good about it, there is things that are bad about it. But I really do hope that on some topics that there is still some strength in there, especially when it comes to topics like terrorism, topics of hurting children, anything like that. I really hope that there is some sort of reporting filter on topics like that.
Well, and the one thing I will add is that there does need to be had a very, very serious discussion about how we are going to actually handle internet companies that become so successful that they then become naturally grown utilities. Okay. And we've been struggling with this with broadband for years. It's still a complete disaster. We have to figure this out, because I can tell you that this is my world, right? I've done multiple startups. I grew up in the Bay Area. This is all about startup world, right? And the way this plays out isn't what people think. I mean, it's hard. It's really
well, what
hard.
do you mean by that? Give me some information.
Well, I mean, basically, wait, hold on. I maybe think of a bad memory I had in the past. What was the original question? Just so I make sure I address it properly.
In regards to, I hope that they do, at least, there are topics that do need to be a little open or a little bit closed, whether it's, we don't need, another ISIS or terrorist group like that going on Twitter.
Yes. So what I was going to say is it when this is not a freedom of speech topic. This isn't a freedom of speech discussion at all. Twitter's private, right? It doesn't even matter if it has shareholders. It is a private. It is like owning a restaurant. It's even worse than that from a legal point of view. When you are running an internet service that is global to the world, there are a lot of protections in place for you, right? For very, very, very good reason, right? Because you're in a very dangerous position. There were several times where there was legislation on tip where if it had passed one way or the other, several of us would have just shut down because of the liability involved, right? And so the thing is that people have to really ask, do we really want Twitter to be a free speech tool? Because if we do, it cannot be run by a public company anymore. It needs to become a public utility of some, and maybe it's some hybrid. I'm not saying it has to be a utility like we've seen before, but the thing is that you can't have it's a very broken system to have something and call it free speech that is being run on servers and cables and bandwidth and work of people that are getting paid by a for-profit company.
Well, I understand that, and I can appreciate that. However, it can't be any worse than what we had seen already. I've seen too much, as a journalist, I'm not saying it's happened to me personally, but I've seen too many posts that have been taken down for no reason.
Oh yes, no. And the thing is that look, the real problem with a lot of this is not necessarily that anything's being taken down, because there are some things that should be taken down. The problem is that we don't know what the rules are, and it's totally haphazard. And when you get tagged, it's like, I mean, half people are surprised when they get. You should never be surprised, right? If you're putting something on offensive, you should be making the calculated decision. I'm going to do this because it's worth the message for me. It shouldn't be I think this is going to be a fine thing, and then suddenly you get slapped with some, condition. That shows that you're not actually educating people on what your policies are. Like, that is so freaking broken. It's ridiculous. So I mean, a lot of it is I agree. I think so much of it is overhanded, but I think some of it, I think a lot of it could have been redirected in ways, because you did want, like you said, you did want things like ISIS messaging being suppressed. You do want things like threats of terrorism being suppressed. So I mean, there are reasonable things that you want to suppress, and it's just. But if you're not doing the suppression in an incredibly transparent way, you're doomed. I don't think there's any other way to do it without transparency.
Well, let's see how it goes. We're in for some interesting times. That is for sure. All right, let's talk some UFOs here, Johnny boy, as we have the alien endgame. What's happening here?
I don't like this story at all. Unfortunately, someone I do respect a little bit sent it to me, so I have to give it some credibility. But what this appears to be is a special streaming event that will be held on Friday, May 20th. And what Discovery Plus is claiming is that they will be showing first-person accounts and exclusive new video examining the extraterrestrial threat to our planet in a new streaming special on Discovery Plus on Friday, May 20th. And they're calling it Alien Endgame. And if I've ever seen a more blatant example of jumping the shark, I'm not sure I have. I mean, for anyone to be calling anything Endgame at this point is, I mean, it's just like, I hate it when people force me to be judgmental, but like, this is really hard. I mean, that's like, how could you possibly say that? It's insane. But I mean, it will be something worth watching and interesting, and, feel free to consume it how you wish. And if anything good comes out of it, obviously, like, it's something we want to focus on. If it actually is really, really good content, then obviously, like, my whole opinion will change. But based on perceptions of previous attempts and so forth, I doubt I'll be watching that live. I'll put it that way.
Just not a fan of aliens. See, you love this whole techie stuff. You don't like the woo enough.
It's actually it's really funny, because I would rather watch a documentary on the skull experiments than watch this, right? Because to me, that has more actionable data in it.
So you don't believe or buy into the whole alien aspect of where ufology is going right now?
Oh, no, actually, this has zero to do with my opinions about what may be going on in the real world. This has everything to do with the marketing and very immature way that Discovery handled the advertising for this content. That's what I find.
But the big corporations like that, they have no clue. The people who are doing the editing, the people who are doing everything like that, as we got about 20 seconds left, have no clue of what
I disagree from the point of view of, we all know what people fear, and you don't see people joking about nukes, right? You don't see people being flabbergasted. You don't see people being exuberant about really scary things, right? Most of the press has some sense of that. This person.
Well, let's continue this talk when we return with the fedora wearing Jon Hudson and the Unbiased UFO report. We'll continue with this. We'll get to more when we return. I'm looking forward to it. Stick around. All right, we're clear.
It's like a Hollywood movie. Is Nick Pope hosting it?
Oh my God. Oh, I hope not.
Oh, they got they got one physicist, so they got their token physicist. That's good.
Look at you, just horrible, right?
That stuff that leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. It really does. To me, this is the epitome of the really dark side of this whole topic is this. It's going to be this. It's going to be toys, and it's going to be that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that's going to be really challenging to deal with.
I don't know, sweet Johnny B.
Trading cards and abduction insurance, and oh my goodness, it's going to get so interesting.
Well, of course it is. That's the whole point. That's the whole point, dude.
You are absolutely right, Nicole. Nick Pope is absolutely harmless. Yes.
Nick, our good friend Nick Pope, he hasn't said anything of quality or substance in at least 10 years.
Yes. And he's also the clueless one that had the poster taken from his wall that didn't even have a high enough clearance to understand that it was a press D on an American system. And he ran around telling everyone it was a UFO, and then went, "Ooh, they took my poster. See how scary the UFO was?" And it was just because he was too low level to find out what it really was. So sad.
That's awesome. That's just awesome.
And he still tells people that was the CAD. What is it? What is it? There's some name for the UFO sighting. And he tells people, and he goes, and the poster mysteriously disappeared. Ooh. Yeah, because they couldn't tell you they took it, because you didn't even have a high enough clearance for them to tell you why they were taking it. I mean, do you realize how low you have to? It's just sad.
You imagine if Nick Pope and Joe Murgia actually knocked heads. No. If they knocked heads,
they'd be linked forever.
They both have that Velcro hair. They would be linked forever. Yeah, they would be like Siamese twins of the UFO world.
That'd be sad. I'd miss Joe.
Well, not me. I like Joe, but I wouldn't miss him. Wouldn't miss him. I'd laugh at him, but I wouldn't miss him. Alien Critter. Nick Pope worked for the MOD. He says something is going on. The end. That's exactly his interview. Oh, you forgot, though, Alien Critter, that he has to quote verbatim Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon. And then he goes, I worked at the MOD. The end.
And here's the thing. Look, okay, I can't say this for sure because I haven't met him, okay? But I believe that I've worked with people like Nick Pope before. And in my experience, these people are actually better at deluding themselves than they are the people around them. And there's actually a very strong possibility that Nick Pope himself actually believes that he was the senior-most person at the MOD looking at UFOs. And I think it's very possible he really believes that. I really do. And he wouldn't know any different because he didn't have a high enough clearance to find out that there was a whole nother unit above him who took his poster.
That's all I'm going to say is,
And I mean, in all honesty, it's probably for the better because that plane is so damn scary. Like that is like, all my life, every weapon I've ever seen, I've been so giddy over the engineering of it that I really have not thought about the ramifications. That is the first plane that I've ever seen specs on where I've been like, why did you build that? I mean, that is a horrifying plane.
All right, we got like 18 seconds. Thank you to Liliopatra, Chris, Vaughn, Obi, Big Dog, Catfish, and Steven for the super chats tonight. We're going to continue on with it right after this.
Oh, thank you. That's kind of kind of you.
We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with a fedora-wearing Jon Hudson and the Unbiased UFO Report. And John, you want to get into something regarding on Reddit UFOs dropping metal? Oh, hold on here, buddy. Hold on. There we go.
Here we go. Yeah. So this is the fun story, because for forever we've been getting all these reports of this slag on the ground, right? And it's been this huge debate because it's like, well, what's going on? It's like, I mean, do UFOs do they sweat? Do they what's going on here? Like, do they get sick? Why? And then people are like, oh, they're gifts. It's like, I'm sorry, gifts usually come maybe not wrapped, but I mean, this looks like waste. I mean, this does not look like nice stuff, And it's like, but how's this work? Well, there have been some people that have hypothesized, well, what if there is an actual process, a natural side effect of their propulsion or their enclosure, right? That essentially causes the slag to be released as a natural effect of that process. And so there's been people looking at, what sort of processes can we create that would result in that kind of stuff being presented. So here we get a video that was posted on Reddit that claims to show an A10 basically interacting with some large glowing orbs that appear to shoot off from them pieces of them, like little pieces of them. Now, what's interesting is that I didn't get to watch the video because it's all been pulled. You can't see it now. It's all been removed. And so I don't know if it was pulled because there was something real going on, or if it was pulled because it was found to be illegitimate. So I just discovered it was pulled just like 15 minutes before I came on. So I apologize I wasn't able to go into it further. However, to me, it's still a really interesting story because I think it kind of, okay, I don't honestly think it was hand created by someone, but even if it was hand created by someone, we now actually have a visual representation of what it would look like for one of these devices to just kick off slag. And I got to be honest with you, even now, describing it, that's not going to look right to me, but but it does give us an analogous example of what it might look like that other people can look for. And so, my guess is that there was something else, because Reddit's usually pretty picky about certain things. And so my guess is that it got tagged for a legitimate reason and it'll be back. But I do think it's just very funny that this cool little video got posted and then boom, I go to dig more into it. And it's like, oh, this post has been pulled, nothing to see here, move along. This is kind of funny, but I love the idea that there could be an actual process that actually produces this slag, because that makes a hell of a lot more sense than anything else I've heard.
The big thing is we have found this slag at different locations all over. It was found at Roswell, San Augustine's, Falcon Lake, many other places where this slag has been seen and found. Do we know if there are any public tests that have been done on any of this slag coming off UFOs?
Public. There's something tickling my head. I wanted to say that there might have been one on one sample, but I don't remember anything conclusive coming out of it. My understanding was that some of the parts that that TTSA was looking, that at least one of the samples TTSA was looking at was a slag sample. And so I don't know what happened to that, but my understanding is that the slag itself has been relatively unremarkable. In that it doesn't have, like, from what I've understood, it hasn't had the same sort of structural elements that we've seen with like the layered magnesium and bismuth.
Okay, so the slag that is coming in, we do know what about it? That it is a metallic source of some kind.
Yeah. It's I don't remember off the top of my head, and I do apologize because I should have checked. But if anyone's like done like a proper like Cheryl Costa kind of analysis of like like all the different metals that have been found and what ratios and where that comes up. But it's from what I've read, it is usually metals that have been found on Earth. It just, but like slag, not good stuff, like the kind of stuff you get from like a molten metal factory.
So weird.
It is.
So
it's super weird. But if you have a liquid metal vehicle that can modify its shape, therefore it is not naturally rigid. It is rigid by choice. It is liquid by low state. And therefore, if a piece of it got broken off, like if a piece of it got knocked off for any reason and it lost connection with the ship, it essentially would lose all of its consistency and just kind of go bloop.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, I haven't been able to, like, I don't know anyone's modeled that. I mean, that's I mean, what I'm saying is based on a thought experiment, but I mean, but how it works, I mean, this is how it works with any other material. I mean, if you have any other material where you have to apply a current to it to get it to take shape, if you can cut off a piece of it, the instant that piece loses attachment to it, it just goes bleh. Because it's getting its structure from whatever is giving it structure, right? It doesn't naturally have structure.
Right. Okay, so the fact that it doesn't have any structure, how do you test something like that? Like, do you test it the way you would, say, if you found a new mineral or something underground?
Well, no, this is the whole reason why, and I wish I could remember who it was that was talking about this. This was the first discussion I've heard that I was really happy with, because he talked about exactly what you're bringing up here, is the fact that up until now, all that's been looked at is what is the material, what is it made out of, what is the slag, what are the ratios, are there any isotopic ratio differences, that kind of stuff. And this one researcher, and I just remember who it was, said, look, we've exhausted that, right? What we now need to look at is, we know that, for example, if you burn fuel in an engine, that you get out, certain chemicals out of a tailpipe, right? And if we were to capture those chemicals out of a tailpipe, we could actually use those chemicals to back engineer what the fuel was and the engine of that vehicle. And so if we assume that this slag is somehow output from that vehicle, that's part of its energy production or anything, then you should be able to back engineer what the output is to what the input was. Now, if it wasn't part of the propulsion or the energy system of any sort, and if it was just the fact that the entire ship is this normally gelatinous or liquid material that only becomes rigid when it's woken up, and part of it gets broken off, and the parts that get broken off fall slag, then in that case you wouldn't necessarily be able to back engineer from it. It's only if it's part of a process. And essentially that's the first time I've ever heard anyone looking at a new approach to looking at this slag, of using it as and assuming it was an output and then backward engineering. It was probably Gary Nolan, I think it was Gary Nolan. Yeah, no, it was Gary Nolan. He was talking to Lex. That's what it was.
Okay. How does this advance the UFO world with this, having studying this slag?
I'm struggling to answer, Dave, because I'm a little hard pressed to think of much of anything that actually qualifies to what you just said. But I think that the way I would put it is that anytime we leave potential answers hanging around, it's insulting to people, right? Because there are people that really have, right or wrong, have a desperate drive to get answers. And if if they think there are answers floating around that are low hanging fruit that you're not going after, then that's not right. So I would encourage everyone to go after what they can. But yeah, I agree, it's a very challenging issue.
All right, let's move on to another topic here that we are dealing with tonight on the Unbiased UFO report. And let's get to, let's see here. There was a report on UFO Trail about, that was about the slag, sorry. Where are we here? I'm a little lost here. Are we done?
Let's see. No. So the last one is on the UFO Trail. This
Sorry,
is
I read it wrong. I apologize.
yeah. No worries. So this is an article that now the one thing I wasn't sure of that I did want to check really quick is it wasn't clear to me if this entire article was written by Ben. See, no, look, so this was written by Jack Brewer. Okay. So this was written by Jack. It's just quoting. Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure I understood properly. So this is just quoting Brian Bender. This isn't actually Brian Bender saying anything directly. But what it specifically talks about is the naming conventions that were used, the way that things were handled, and basically really kind of I guess you could say this what this article is starting to do is starting to call the Pentagon to task for the intentional deception and the unnecessary misleading that they did. That was just some of it was just ridiculous. And I haven't been able to dig into finding out exactly exactly how much interest and how much pull and what the possibilities are of this story kind of getting flushed out. But I do really admire and I do really like the idea that in many ways one of the ways that things like UFO topic benefit a society is where it breaks things, where it breaks systems that we thought were fine, that weren't fine, that get pushed to a limit and they break and we fix them because they've got broken. And in many ways, I think this topic is going to be very much like that, in that I think that what he's getting to is that, I think what we have here is we've been talking for a while now about the trust and the credibility issue that we have in the press, and the trust and credibility issues we have with the government. And I think what we have here is a very black and white, direct example of the harm that does. And so honestly, as far as I'm concerned, you could read this and decide it's worth it. I don't agree, but if that's the decision and everyone votes, I'm fine with that. But everyone should be looking at this eyes open and realize what the cost is of this sort of deception.
So, for the public who may not understand the whole deception of it, why should we be concerned?
So the thing is it depends. It very much depends on where you're coming from, right? Because if you're coming from the point of view of the government is evil and they're the devil incarnate, then this is just wonderful evidence for you to feel better about your conclusions. That's not necessarily how I would take it. I would take it as essentially everyone coming clean about how badly this has been done, and essentially looking at, okay, where were those deceptions done? Why were they done? Right? Because the thing is that we've had to write this into law now. Okay, you actually in the United States cannot legally classify something purely to save yourself from being publicly embarrassed. Okay, now I want to say that had to be written into law because people were doing it. Okay, so that's how tight. So that's what I'm saying is what this really is going to do is force us to look at, okay, where was the deceptions? Why were the deceptions had? And for the UFO community, it's very much it's a truing up as far as a communication level, but it's also a chance to get a real world view of the fact that a lot of the deception that people have been talking about is real. It's very real, and it's very pragmatic, and it's very well executed.
Jon, it's always a good pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio with the Unbiased UFO Report. Very much appreciate your time, my friend.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks everyone for listening.
All right.